Rolling.
Okay, this is going to be for Small Business Confidential and for Cleveland Real Estate Investor. So we'll make it work on both platforms. And what we're going to talk about, we'll have Brooke lead off. Talk about, all right, what happened last year? What happened last year? Where did we make it? What were some questions that popped up? What jobs should we use? So we're not, and the title of this should be, we don't want, and we can play around with the title, everybody can kind of kick in their ideas. We don't want Enron numbers. Don't fool yourself. And in Enron's case, it was, they're just fooling the shareholders and the handful of people at the top were just selling their stock and making millions on it. So when you got a small business, you're not a publicly owned company, then you have to be ruthlessly honest with yourself about what's working and what's not working. So in January is where you look at all the good, bad, and ugly of 2025 going into 26. You are learning what worked, what didn't work, and what could work. Sometimes there's a gestation period where, like take the Fairmont Mansion, where, we know there's potential here, but we just haven't cracked the code, and all of a sudden it takes off. That's not unusual for, a business. But you can't fool yourself. And you should have some sort of deadline, like, hey, if this isn't cutting it, it's time to jettison. I also think, and this is important, because we're going to look at 2025, and we're going to recognize what's working, what's not working. But what is really important is to set up some sort of measuring points where we have the ability to measure as we go if it's working. We don't want to wake up at the end of the year asking what just happened. We need to know. It's almost like a train station. You're going from New York to Chicago. You're going to have stops on the road. Those are those quarterly reports. Maybe in some cases it's monthly reports. But it's measuring, are we on the right road here? Is this working? So general thoughts on 2025, Brooke?
Do you want me to speak as if there's no camera here?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to no
we got RFK Jr. here.
Yeah. Well, I think to no surprise, we did not reach our goal from what we wanted to make from a profit study standpoint and our properties. So we originally set a pretty ambitious goal at the start of 2025 for a profit of $800,000, and we made just under $670,000.
Okay.
I mean, that's still, that's a solid year. Our final man hour was 31, so at least it's good. It was above the 30 threshold. From a property standpoint, we had set a very ambitious goal of 275,000. With taxes and all expenses included, we netted 104,000.
Right.
Now, the good thing about the properties is, from the beginning of the year, it started off not great. I can just pull this.
And this for people out there who own property, the market really cooled off in terms of renting. We had a lot of vacancies. We got a lot of vacancies, and then Brooke last year, I think it was like late winter, looking at the numbers and saying we got 3 houses where we actually lost money on.
Right.
And so what we did was okay, so first of all, why is this happening? Why are we losing money on this? And then you start asking the questions, probing, digging, following that thread. Well, it turned out that there's just too much competition. There's too many people in Airbnb. And what was interesting was we were still at a post-COVID real estate high. The market was it was coming down in the winter, but hadn't settled into a normal Cleveland market. So these properties, we could sell them quick because there wasn't any inventory. So what we decided to do after looking at the numbers, we said, we got to sell these underperforming properties. So we started quickly selling. All right. Now you got how many?
Sorry to jump in. I think to put it in perspective, in January of last year, we had around 12 properties, and we netted $6,000
Profit out of 12.
In November, we had 5 or 6 houses, and we netted 17,000.
Yeah.
So that just shows you that if you cut your losses, you really fine tune your advertising and your marketing. Get rid of the stinkers, keep the ones that are profitable. I mean, what I just said is literally the example we've been saying all year. Less houses, more money.
Less houses, more money. What's interesting is, Mac, you're kind of new to this. Our cousin Kyle, nephew Kyle of the podcast. But when people want to know if you're successful or not, you know what they ask? How many crews do you have? How many houses do you own? And it's interesting because in this case, what we found is the more houses we own, the less money we're making. I mean, think about it. Because in a market where it's oversaturated with, short-term properties, suddenly we don't own that beach. Suddenly, we're not the only frozen yogurt store. There's about a dozen of them. Just, people, or a coffee shop, or a fitness center, or a yoga studio. Suddenly everybody's doing it. And that's the time to get, is to cut your losses. But every vacant house, like right now in January, we're going through a polar vortex. And every house that's vacant is a negative. It's like a weight on the boat. It's just holding everything down because we got to pay for the heat, right? We got to send guys out to make sure that there's no damage after it was minus 10 degrees. Those kind of dirty little issues never get discussed. What is the cost of holding a vacant property? Now think about it. We made $6,000 net profit in January after heat, taxes, insurance, right? And we had how many properties?
12.
Okay, so that's 12 properties, and here's where we can do the little chalkboard math, Mac. Do 12 properties at an average cost of $200,000. 12 properties times 200,000 is how much?
Sorry.
2.4 million.
2.4 million. 2.4 million times 10% is how much? 24,000? 240,000?
240.
Okay. What's 240 divided by 12?
20,000.
So, if we had 2.4 million in a investment account, a good investment account. I'm just using 10%. That's a good return on investment, right? It's not T-bills at 5%, but let's say it's ETFs. It's a good mix of stocks. The market did well last year. We would have made, with that money just sitting there, 25,000, right? $25,000 for that month on 12 properties, that's more than 6,000, right?
Yep.
And that's when I want everybody to imagine, put this visual in, like a Rubik's Cube. You're moving things around, or an elephant. You're looking at that elephant in 5 different ways: top, side, front, back, left side, right side, whatever. You're looking at it and you're really keeping an open mind. You're not trying to fiddle with the numbers. You're not playing Enron here. You're really looking at the numbers and asking yourself, is this investment working? Is this investment working? Because is this company working? Should I sell? And there's a great guy who, Mark Ridley, look him up. He says, "Why do businesses fail?" Great podcast. Why do businesses fail? Businesses fail a lot of times because they got a great product like Garmin watch, Fitbit, CarMax, right business, right time, Radio Shack 20 years ago when you were a little kid. And then they went bankrupt. Blockbuster, bankrupt. Netflix exploded. You got to know when to hold them and you got to know when to fold them. When is the time to get out? And we got out, thankfully. We're down to 4 houses with the potential that 4 great houses that are, if Fairmont can turn around, if the mansion can turn around, we will make in 4 houses more money than we made last year, January.
Yeah.
So we were holding 12 houses in January, right? Was there more?
Yeah, it was,
Fairmont?
Yeah, we had Allison, Blanche, Cumberland, Fairmount, Fenley, Forest Hill, Hollister, Lee, Linfield, Maple One, Wyatt 2, Yellowstone.
So that's 12. Right. Okay. 12 houses. And now we've taken our money, we parked it here, and the idea is, on the property side, we're going to focus on those properties that make more than 10%. They got to make more than 10% because we're taking risk here. So our goal is these properties should make between 15 and 20%. I could make between 6 and 10% managing my portfolio. No risk. Well, yeah, there's a risk, if you have a mix of stocks where, maybe it's a little too aggressive.
But you don't have to worry about a polar vortex.
Yeah. And I don't have to be getting a phone call at night saying furnace just went out or tree fell on a house, right? So if you're into properties, that's a risky investment. That's a risky investment, and there is a lot more time spent managing that than you realize. Great point. I had a brother of mine, I remember a long time ago, he said, he's a chef, great chef. He started out and a hotel company hired him. This is like 25 years ago. And he said, well, I'm making $50,000 salary. $50,000 salary. But he's working 60 hours a week. Do the math. Gets 2 weeks off, $60,000 a week. Let's get that chalkboard up, Mac. $60,000 a week. I'm sorry, 60,000.
60 hours a week.
Okay, 60 hours a week, 50,000. All right. Okay, figure in the overtime, 20 hours overtime, right? He would have made more money working at McDonald's. Say making $10 an hour. What's $10 an hour? $10 an hour times, or say $15 an hour. Okay, because he's a head chef at McDonald's, right? Making 15, so 15 times 2,000 is what, 35,000, right? We have 1,000 hours of overtime at 25. That's $25,000. That's more. He's making 60 at McDonald's. Same pace. People don't understand. They get so mesmerized by what you're doing. I'm a chef. I'm a woodworker. I'm a this. I'm a that. I own 6 properties. It sounds like you're making money. The reality is you're not making money. You think you're making money. You know what? Garbage collectors, private garbage collectors, they make a ton of money. Not a sexy business. So you got to ask yourself, if I'm into properties, why do I want to own all these properties? Why do I want to own all these headaches? Then I got to find the tenants. The tenants, you better find great tenants. You could buy a tenant, find a tenant, they're in a house, and bingo, they ruined the house. Now you got 10 grand just to repair the house they ruined. And maybe they stop paying rent 3 or 4 months into the rent. That happens all the time. Now you got to evict them. So not only are you not making any money because they're not paying the rent, you got to pay to evict them, and now you got to pay to clean it up. This is the dirty underside of real estate investing. But you could have the same thing happen if you have a yoga studio, if you have a fitness studio, if you have a yogurt shop, if you know, a retail store. Now you're competing with Amazon. There are a lot of ways you could go sideways. So you got to spend a lot of time building awareness of what's working, what's not, and what are you actually making. What else for last year?
Well, from a non-billable standpoint, we did hit our goal, so we didn't go too crazy.
Non-billable would be office support staff,
Warehouse. Yep. Our overhead, you know, the big thing that we added that we didn't really know at the start of last year was the whole computer consulting.
Right.
So we set an initial goal of $350,000 for the year. We ended up at $364,000.
Okay.
Which makes sense because we did lower advertising costs slightly, but then we increased the computer consulting.
Okay.
So from a non-billable, like true costs from the company standpoint, I think we did, you know, like these numbers aren't a surprise.
Right.
Which is good.
But we knew along the way how we were doing.
Right.
And the prop sales that we did, we realized capital gains. I mean, these properties that we sold, we bought them in the crash.
Super cheap.
Super cheap. 08, 09, we fixed them up.
No mortgage.
No mortgage. No mortgage. They had, so we were taking money off the table, and we were making money off of that. Now, you could only do that so much. Okay? So we had a buffer. We made money on the prop sales, made money on the flip on our Northwood property. Now we're in a position where we're reinventing the company. What do we want to do? Doing more TikTok, doing more these podcasts, doing more consulting, doing more subletting. We're looking at everything that we do. Every time we spend an hour at a job, is that job making money? Every hour. And so for example, you know, for those who have their own business, the absolute single most important thing you have to have is the money chart. We'll do a visual on the money chart. The money chart for everybody playing at home is, what are you making? What are you spending? What are you making? What are you spending? Now, you know, Amari holding the camera. Quit smoking. How much did that save you for a year? He's shaking his head. $7 grand?
Yeah, probably.
We did the math.
Yeah, like $11 a pack.
Another whiteboard, Mac. $11 a pack.
Probably 5 a week.
5 a week.
At my highest.
So you're not a heavy smoker.
Not like Brooke.
Not like Brooke.
I quit.
He quit. So let's do the math. So you had,
$11 a pack.
How many packs a week?
5 a week.
55.
52 days. It's like $3,000 spending.
55 a week. That's how much a month? That's what, 200? It's like 250. That's what I read.
Oh, I messed something up.
You need to bring a calculator.
Yeah, I know.
I'll do it in my head. I'm so good with numbers. So we got 55. Let's just do it by the month. 55 times 4. That's like 200. Let's just say round it out to 250. Times 12 is $3,000. $3,000 right there. You're spending $3,000. Read it and weep. Then you're doing DoorDash.
Mhm.
Then you're doing Uber. You know. And so what you do, abracadabra, you say to yourself, all right, listen, I'm going to kind of limit the DoorDash. I'm going to go to Whole Foods. I'm going to go to West Side Market. I'm going to start cooking. I enjoy cooking. It's relaxing. All of a sudden, you're taking DoorDash off the table. Yeah, you're doing a couple of DoorDash, maybe, you know. But all of a sudden, you wake up and you just say, you know what? Between DoorDash, Uber, and
Cigarettes.
That's $10,000 right there, probably. So it's $10,000, and guess what? I'm making this in my job. Maybe I go to the boss, me, and say, geez, I would like to work some projects overtime. Okay? Because you're there, you're recognizing an opportunity. So right away, you're making another $10,000 in overtime. So you got $10,000 in overtime, $10,000 saved. Now you got 20, right? Your core bills are still getting paid, right? Okay, your core bills are still getting paid. Now you got $20,000 a year. Guess where that goes? Bingo, savings, investing. Then the compound interest start kicking in. You put 20 away for 10 years, every year, that's $500,000 compound interest. Put that on the whiteboard. But it's the power of numbers. So if you have your own business, what exactly are you making? What are you spending? What are you making? Now, if you're not doing this on your own personal shit, your own money chart, why are you running a business? Okay? That's like a guy, buying an NFL football team. He doesn't even doesn't know what football is, So start with the fundamentals. And here's another thing if you have your own business on your money chart. What are you prioritizing your time? Your time should be spent every week tracking what you're spending, tracking what you're investing. Start building other charts to go along with it, which is, what am I doing this week to advance my business, change my business, improve my business? What am I doing at home? If you're married, am I going out? Am I taking my wife out? Spending time with my kids? These are all choices you are making every day, every week, because it should be connected. And here's the home run. What's your goals for the year? What are your goals for the year? I want to see this amount of money in the bank. I want to quit smoking. I want to work out. And I want to eliminate the headaches in my business that are driving me crazy. You just write it all out. Write it all out in January. Write it on a legal pad. Then look at it every week. Every week. So now that we've got a lot of properties off the books, we got cash. Now our goal this year, contracting, we're still in the contracting, but now we're doing sublets and consulting as part of our contracting business. We got the core houses. We're looking to make at least X number of dollars on that. And then guess what? We're supplementing it by managing our portfolio. All that money we sold that is now in Raymond James. John Schloss, our guy. Shout out for John Schloss. So we are going to make more money than we made on properties on managing our money.
That's the goal.
That's the elevator speech. And then when every day you wake up, you say to yourself, what am I doing to advance that? Now you get into managing. Now you get into tenants. Now you start, you know what? You're fucking Superman now. You know why? Because you're looking around the corner. You're seeing through buildings with your x-ray vision. You're seeing that tenant coming around. You're saying, I don't want to rent to that person. Credit score 600, working on their credit. I don't know. Call the landlord. Oh, haven't paid rent? No, staying away from that. Am I going to do short term? What kind of short term am I doing? What kind of customers I'm working for? What kind of jobs do I want to take? Everything is now put through that matrix of your experience and what you thought about.
Right.
What else last year?
Well, one of it's, and it's not because he's in trouble. It does relate to Amari. But one thing.
Is he in trouble?
No, he's not. Just studying all the, different, we have different categories on our payroll. We have our billables, our office, properties, and our warehouse. Besides our other office employee who works remote, Amari did have the lowest billable hours, and just sitting next to him every day tells me that we need to find a way to really amp it up with him. And this does relate to what we talked about earlier in this podcast. It kind of starts with that every day. Just you're working on that goal every single day. And I know we talked about this last year. We talked about this the year before. But as we sell off all of our, a lot of properties, there's no prop sales jobs to dump hours into.
Well, there will be this year. Got Forest Hill 2, you got Blanche, you got Yellowstone.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. So
I just think that it's not. If anyone needs to be earning more billables in this company, it's Amari.
well, here's the thing, and this is going to be interesting. We are setting the table for what I call big home runs. I just got done reading great bio on the Hall of Fame manager Earl Weaver of the Baltimore Orioles. He was a big proponent on good pitching, good defense, and 3-run homers. That was it. That was the 3 keys. Baltimore Orioles, great teams in the 60s and the 70s. Now, what we're doing now is we're setting up for those big home runs, as opposed to the chip shot, mini jobs that we do. We do these mini jobs. Amari gets an hour here, he gets 2 hours here managing. We want to get Amari out of that role. We want to get it over to somebody else because we want Amari working with Mac. We want to juice up the TikTok. We want to juice up, the marketing and the advertising in a different format. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, we're going to have a big ass home run job come in. Somebody wants to sell their house.
I do think then going into 2026, we should really classify when he does his timesheet of, okay, what is strictly office and then what is advertising?
Right.
Because when we do get that job, we can literally pull up that advertising job and be like, great, Amari's sitting at 600 hours.
I think we might do a variation, Amari and Lindsay, on buffer. I'm open to that, as long as it doesn't. Now, what buffer is, everybody, is, we're going out and doing, let's say we go out and do 10 estimates. Okay, now 10 estimates, our goal is to sell 60 to 70% of those estimates. People are calling, we want to filter them. Make sure these are legit sales opportunities. We get the salesman out there me, somebody else in the organization. We want them to make sure they're selling correctly. All right? It's kind of like we've recognized what the pitches are that we want to hit. Okay, get it back, hit this ball. So they're selling at maybe a 60-70% rate. Now, if they do 10 estimates at 60%, what we're looking at is within each estimate, there's going to be a minimum of 5 to 10 hours of estimate time, right? So you got 10 estimates you're doing. Let's just use 5 hours. That's 50 hours right there. All right. Now we're not going to get all of those estimates, but we're shooting. We're not hoping. Don't say that word. We're shooting for 70%. 70% of 50 hours is, I believe, like 35 hours. 35 hours. Now, to do 10 estimates, you know how long it physically takes you to do 10 estimates? About 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. I could do 10 estimates in 2 days if I was, locked in and not getting interrupted. So the buffer concept is I will pay forward. I will invest that time because I know I'm going to get it back on the sales. So that buffer is kind of like a holding hours. And we've been doing that for 20, 30 years because right now it's wintertime. We're doing estimates, and we'll get that back when these sales come in. And that's what I think we should look at, what Amari's doing and especially what Lindsay's doing on the sublet side. But we can't play Enron. We can't play Enron and say, oh yeah, well, we made all these hours this week, but they're all funny hours because the buffer is now bloated and we'll never get it back. I know I'm going too fast, but that should be the play. And then we measure it. Is this buffer concept working after 2 months? Because one thing I know we don't want to do, we don't want to hold properties because we're losing money. Most of them are vacant. Okay, we know what we don't want to do. We don't want Amari doing Mickey Mouse mini job stuff. We need to get somebody else to do that. So now he's concentrating with Mac on the TikTok and the marketing. That's where we want to be because we think we're going to get some big ass whales coming in through that. So let's make the investment in that. Okay? So what we used to do at this time, we used to buy a property, Ellesmere 2 behind Mac's house. We bought that. We bought Ellesmere 1 in 2003. We bought a few other properties just to keep the guys busy. We'd buy a property. Okay, that's 2,000 hours right there. We can keep our crews busy in an otherwise slow part of the year, which is the winter. Now, what Amari and Mac are doing is a variation of that. We are investing in this direction, in the social media development. What's your thoughts?
I think my thoughts are we have to find a way to monetize what they're doing.
Right.
For a property, it's pretty straightforward. You can fix it up, you can sell it, make some money back. I think with what we're doing, yeah, it's exciting, but at some point we need to find a way to be making money on this.
Okay, let me just spin this out. Let's say we start getting this TikTok stuff and we're doing our email blast with it. We're talking about, here's how you get your house ready to sell. We know that we excel at getting properties, turning them around, getting them fixed up, and then selling, right? We got a lot of our customers, after 50 years, we got a lot of customers we work for 30, 40 years. They're exiting their house. Okay? We get a couple of those jobs where it's $100,000, $50,000 to $100,000 worth of work which is usually the average, getting these houses ready to sell without us necessarily buying them, or in some cases we buy and flip them like the old model. Amari's time is going to get swept up in that one sale. There could easily be on a $50,000 to $100,000 project 100 hours just in getting that, landing that job. That's how we monetize this. That's the direction I'm seeing.
Okay.
And then we have the whole Project Wrath, RATH. You can flash our website on there. Project Wrath, Residents Against Terrible Housing, where we're going after these vacant houses owned by these absentee landlords, and we're suing their ass because it's a nuisance to the community. There's another possible investment property. And then with the investment property, maybe there's an investor out there who's watching this TikTok that wants to buy a good investment. I'll sell you a good investment.
Yeah, I think with these podcasts and the work that we're doing on social media, this can draw traffic in for people who want consultations. I mean, that was a big part of the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast,
Right.
the Small Business Confidential podcast. But there's also ways just to generate money just from the content itself. That's something I'll plan to talk with Monique about. I mean, if you're getting a certain amount of engagement and views, that's money from these different platforms like YouTube and Instagram, in some cases TikTok. I mean, creators get paid and can live their life through doing that stuff, but then also, getting sponsored by different companies and stuff like that. So the more engagement that we get on this stuff, it can be turned into
Exactly.
money in a
I don't
variety of
think we
ways.
fully understand that.
Well, that was my whole point. I mean, it's like finding a way, like you said, to monetize this, whether it's through advertisements, through views, through clicks,
Mhm.
through sponsorship.
Mhm.
That's something that, in all podcasts I listen to, all YouTube channels I follow,
Mhm.
there's always,
Ads.
ads.
Yep.
But it's all ads that are, specific to, like the channel or,
Mhm.
the podcast and stuff like that. So I think that is clearly a step that we need to be taking.
Mhm.
Just from, it's great to, grab that whale when you catch it, through a house, through, buying an investment, but
Mhm.
just to have a little more security, I think, doing what you just said is like,
I even I had an idea too, whether this is going to be Mac helping me or Melanie, but setting up a Patreon, which is like, it's a platform with a paywall. So then somebody who's interested in our content, really like into the stuff Mike is saying, you're saying, wants to, be more, just get more content out of us, we can have them pay a small fee per month to get like exclusive content. So if like something like this where we're talking about like a little bit more detailed about our company and a little more sensitive information, something like that could be good content to be exclusive to where it's like you gotta pay us to hear us talk about this stuff.
Well, one of the things that I keep goes around in my head is I know what we're doing is different. I've been hearing that for a long time. You heard me talk about Sherwin-Williams. Sherwin-Williams came over in 2000. They wanted me to show them how to do a website. Okay? Because their reps said, you got to come over to this company. They're doing websites. They're doing a website for their company. Riley Painting. They're doing email blasts. They're sending it, and they were like, what? 2000. They didn't have a website. And all the stuff that we've been doing, the Man-Hour Profit, the Jonah work, our own system, companies just don't do that, contracting at that level. So I know we have compelling content.
Mhm.
And I think we start packaging this and throwing it out, we're going to get some buzz coming in. People have small businesses. How do you hire? How do you manage?
Mhm.
We were talking about JP. There are a lot of companies that have JP. What do you do with JP? You know, consult, they'd pay us to help them. I just talked to our lawyer, Brian Green. His son just bought a property down in Columbus, a rental, because he wants them to get in the rental business. I said, you should call us for consulting, like the swim guy that we used for the pool. So I know it's there. I know it's there. Just gotta go to the bathroom real quick. I got it. I'll be right back.